In this video, we're going to be learning some figure drawing, starting with the most basic structure, the stick figure. Figure drawing is just an overall awesome art practice. It's useful for honing your senses of observation. It's great in training all of the basic techniques of drawing, and it's also really useful for planning larger scale projects. This is the beginning of a figure drawing series, and I intend for these lessons to be beneficial for absolutely anybody. No experience is required to start with these videos, but if you have lots of experience, that's great too. These videos are a great way to deepen your understanding of these principles, which will always improve your art. It's always good to go back to the basics again and refine a stronger and stronger foundation in these basic principles. So we're going to be starting this life drawing series with the most basic of basics. We're going to be drawing some stick figures. Now, you may wonder why I'm starting with stick figures here, and the reason is one of the core fundamentals of art, and that is that you always want to simplify. Drawing people is a great way to practice this simplification because they're just so darn complicated. Drawing people is difficult, no doubt about it. But one of the great things about art is that you can always simplify your subject. And in fact, you always want to simplify your subject, breaking it down into the most basic possible parts. And then you can build up from there with as much complexity as you like. That's the secret to drawing right there. It's not that complicated. It's not rocket science. What good drawing is just looking at something and breaking it down into some geometric shapes. That looks like a box. That looks like a circle. Once you got your box and your circle drawn out, well, then you just refine the shape more and more, and you can go as long as you like and get something that's photorealistic, starting just with basic geometric shapes. So that's what we're going to be doing with these stick figures. We're going to be looking at different poses of models, and I'm going to be using ovals and circles and a couple curved lines to draw that entire figure out of just geometric shapes. In general, I'm going to be devoting about 1 minute per pose while I'm doing this. And in terms of photo reference, I'm using photos from a site called Pexels.com. That's P-E-X-E-L-S. And I've just done a search for pose and saved a bunch of poses that looked interesting. Another great thing you could do if you don't want to use Pexels is just go on Pinterest and type pose, and you'll just have a whole smorgasbord of models that you can look at and try to create stick figures. Okay, so I'm just going to start off really slowly here while I show you the general structure of my stick figure. These will speed up as we go along, but right now I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the structure that I'm using and why I'm using the ovals that I'm using, why I'm placing them, where I'm placing them, what I'm doing with the lines. I'll use this first one as an example to just explain the gist of how and why I structure my figures the way I do. So looking at this figure, the first thing I'm going to do is indicate where his head is with the oval. The head is usually a good starting point for your figure. So I just got that nice oval shape there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a curvy line that kind of represents the gist of the way his spine is curving in this picture. So I'll start about right here. I'm going to curve out and to the left. So the spine kind of looks something like that. The reason why I'm using a curvy line instead of a series of straight lines is because curvy lines are organic. When you look at nature, living things are composed of curvy lines. If you look at inorganic things like, rocks, those are generally composed of straighter lines. So if you want to draw something living, it's just going to come off better if you use curves. So this guy's spine naturally curves off to the left like that. So there's my little curvy line. I'll say one more thing about curvy lines before I keep going, and that is that you want to use the longest unbroken curvy line that you can. So notice I'm not doing like a series of little small curves with my finger, making these tiny hatch points. If I did that, there would be kind of a loss of flow in the drawing. So rather than that, I try to use the bigger joints in my arm. So using my shoulder and my elbow to make this curve here. It's a good idea to use the bigger joints in your arm rather than these tiny little finger joints. Things will just look a lot more smoothly when you get the practice of using the bigger joints of your arms. All right, I promise things will speed up after this first one, but I want to give you a good groundwork of what I'm doing here. So after I've drawn the head and the spine, now I'm going to do just a little line around the crotch area just to indicate the midpoint of the body. The crotch is about the halfway point, so that's a good mile marker just to let you know where the rest of the body parts are going to go. Now that I've got this little indicator here, I'm going to draw in the hips, and that's going to be another oval. So there we go, looks something like that. And then I'll draw his rib cage. That's going to be another oval that looks something like that. From there, I'll draw in the legs, and I want to just use one smooth line for this. His leg here isn't that bent, so there's no need for me to do more than one line there. I'll do a little indicator there for his feet too. Then I'll do his other leg, goes into about the midpoint of his hip. And we'll do a curvy line for the top part of the leg and a curvy line for the bottom, the little foot. See, this little figure's starting to come together. Next, I'm going to do some circles for his shoulders. The reason why I'm doing separate circles for the shoulders is because your shoulders kind of float on your rib cage anyways. You can see for yourself if you just right now just lift up your shoulders and drop them. Do you see how freely they can move, kind of irrespective of your ribs? There's a lot of gesture and emotion you can communicate in that. So rather than tying the shoulders to the rib cage and getting this kind of stiff, unmoving thing, I want to really make these shoulders separate so you can see that they can really float around all over the place. All right, next I'll do his arms. Just simple lines there. And I'm going to do a single line for his other arm. And then one other thing I like to do is I like to do a little curve around here to indicate the shoulder blades, or I'm sorry, the collar. I don't remember what it's called. You know what I'm talking about. That's a good indicator of gesture there. And then on the head, I'm going to do a curvy line to indicate which direction the head is facing. So this curve is the middle of the face. That's what that's supposed to represent. And then I'm going to do a horizontal curve right around where the eye level is. That kind of shows you that he's looking up. If I were to curve it like this, it would look more like he was looking down. So there you go. This is the general structure of the body. You see that all the basic elements are here, but it's been broken down and really, really simplified. You've got this very complex figure in front of you, but he's been broken down into basically 3 ovals and a bunch of sticks. So let's do another drawing, and we're going to move a little more quickly this time. Okay, so this is a nice sideways view of a model sitting down, and we're going to use the exact same process as last time. So starting off with the head, we'll get a nice oval shape. Then we're going to do a curve for the spine and the neck. Kind of goes around like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. This can be scratchy. Remember that our goal here isn't to come up with something beautiful. This is training. Stuff is going to get beautiful over time as you practice and really instill the fundamentals. But during practice time, you really don't want to get hung up on the results of this. You want to use it as an opportunity to learn. So I've done a little curve here to represent the crotch or the midpoint of the body. And now I'm looking for where this guy's hip is. It's about right here. Don't be afraid to take time to really look. I mean, that's what art is about, right? You're observing. So don't feel like you have to move too quickly. Taking time to just stop and look is invaluable and really important. The reason why life drawing is timed is not to hurry you up. It's just a guard to make sure that you don't get overly involved in the details. That's why there's timing. So slow down. Feel like you can take as much time as you need to, and just whatever amount of detail you can get in that time, that's great. So now I'm going to get his rib cage. Something like that. And in some poses, the rib cage and the hips are going to overlap with each other. Now I'll do his legs. Great little gesture line there for the legs. And another for the bottom part. Give a little line for his feet. Okay, then I'll do his other leg. It's doing something kind of like that. Now his shoulders are a little forward. And you can't really see his other shoulder, but I'll indicate it anyways. It's somewhere around there. There's a nice little swoopy line there for the arm. His other arm is kind of doing something like that. And then I'll do a line indicating the eyes. And there's not really a line that I can put here vertically because he's pretty much a total profile. All right, here's another nice side view of a model, this time standing up. So start with the oval for the head. And then we're going to do a nice line indicating the spine. Horizontal line for the crotch area. We'll draw in the hips. Rib cage is doing something kind of like that. And then I'm going to start with this back leg. The reason why I'm doing that is because that back leg is where her weight is. It's kind of the more important leg because it's where she's putting her weight. And this leg's kind of secondary. There isn't really as much weight on it. So I'll do that second. Sorry, the feet are kind of cut off based on how big I drew it. All right, then her shoulder is lifted a little bit. This nice curvy line for the whole arm. Her other shoulder's about right there. And the arm curves out. I'll do a little indication for her hands since that's kind of part of the pose. All right, then I'll do a vertical line for where her head is turned and a horizontal line for her eyes. Okay, in this pose the model is seated and the top part of her legs are pointing towards us. These perspective shots can be a little tricky. They're really great opportunities to practice seeing and especially breaking down your figure into just shapes. If you follow the shapes, then you're going to get the figure in the end. All right, so I'm adding a little bit of curve to the spine just to make it look organic. Do a little line for the crotch, and then her hips, doing something like this. Rib cage, doing something like that. And I'm going to do a little line here for the collarbone again, because she's got a nice gesture of her shoulders sloping down to the right. And again, I'm going to indicate that with my shoulder circles as well. You can see there's some nice, cool emotion that you get from that little tilt. Okay, now for these legs, what we'll do is I'm going to do a line indicating the first part of the legs, and then the second. Do some lines indicating the feet as well. Okay, and then we'll do the arms. Just curvy lines for the arms since they're not bent. All right, and then her head is turned down just a little bit and pretty much straight on. There we go. There's our stick figure. All right, here's another cool dynamic shot of a standing figure. So we're going to start with the head. Then we'll do the curve of the spine. Feel free to really exaggerate this curve too. The tendency is that you're going to kind of average out your curves and things will end up looking more stiff than when you started. So you can really push those curves, and after you do some more work on them, they will start to look more normalized. So pushing can add some style and some nice movement to it. Okay, so we got the hips, we got the ribs. Now let's do this leg curved out. And this leg going back. Super cool pose. Get her shoulders. I'm going to do just a single line here. A little shape for the hand. You can't see the other arm. I assume it's probably her shoulder's probably right there. It looks like her other arm is either sticking out away from her or it's going straight down. I'll go ahead and just draw it straight down like that. All right, then her head is turned. Eyes are pretty much level. There we go. Okay, and I'll finish up with one more pose. This is a runner. And then I'll give you a little bit of homework. So here's the head. Her spine is pretty straight, but every spine does have kind of a natural S-curve to it. Put in the hips. Put on the ribs. All right, then I'll do this leg where her weight is. This curved leg up in the air. Very cool. Shoulders. All right, her arms are significantly bent, so I'm going to do it in 2 lines. Same with this other arm. All right, and then just a line indicating the eyes. So, a great way to practice these stick figures is just to find some poses. Like I said, you can go to Pexels.com, you can go to Pinterest, and just search pose. Other searches you could do are gymnastics or yoga. That'll usually bring up some pretty cool poses to practice on. And then just set a 1-minute timer and try to draw a stick figure more or less in that 1-minute time limit. However you want to break up that time is totally acceptable. You can spend the first 30 seconds just looking at the pose, getting a gist of it, and then spend the second 30 seconds drawing. Or you can intermittently look in between pose, do some drawing, whatever works best for you. But generally you can get it down to 1 minute, and I would say maybe try doing 10 of these every day for a week. That's going to be a great practice for you to start looking at a really complicated human figure and starting to see it in terms of geometry. Let's break down all of this complexity and turn it into a structure that is very, very simple. You've got ovals and you've got lines. This practice of seeing something as simplified is going to be a foundation that we're going to build up off of. Eventually, we're going to start creating simplified volumetric shapes. We're going to start adding gesture to those. And before you know it, you're going to have something that looks very complex, even though it's built on a really basic shape. Now, don't feel discouraged if the stick figures you draw, you don't think they look nice or you think they look stiff. That's all right. Things don't need to look pretty. The most important part of this is that you're enjoying the process. That is number 1. And number 2, that you're learning from it. The results of your drawing doesn't matter. What matters is that you're seeing. As you grow in seeing, you're going to grow better at art, and inevitably things are going to end up looking prettier over time. But if we get too hung up on stuff looking pretty now, then we're not going to take chances, and we're not going to really be free to experiment and explore. And that's what we want in figure drawing, is just to be free of any constraints of how it's going to look. Let's use this as fun time and as learning time. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked this video, give me a little like, follow the channel, and click the bell icon. And if you'd like to support me making more videos like this, you can join my Patreon. The link is down in the description. Happy art making, everyone.